This is Tanya Pearson interviewing Donita Sparks for the Women of Rock Oral History Project on July 21st, 2015 in Santa Monica, California. Thank you so much for participating, Donita.
My pleasure.
Like I said, this is a personal biography, so I'd like to start at the beginning. It's like, Donita Sparks, this is your life. Where you grew up, relationship with your parents, if you had any siblings, when you started getting interested in music.
I was born in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, and my family moved to the suburbs when I was 2. So I grew up on the south side suburbs, very middle class. You know, on our street there were construction workers and there were professionals too. So it wasn't, you know, it was very middle class. I have 3 older sisters, and my oldest sister is 8 years older than me, and it kind of goes from there. And my father was a high school principal, and my mother was a housewife until I became, I think, probably in 1st grade, and then she went to work. She was a feminist, and she wanted to go to work. I was the youngest, and so then I became, you know, is the expression a latchkey kid? What is that? I don't know what.
I know I've heard it, but I don't actually.
I'd go to lunch at my friend's house and come home, and my mom would be at work, you know, so it was like, so that was good for me. But, so yeah, my parents were both liberals, and we were living in a very conservative neighborhood, like a lot of white flight families moving to the suburbs, you know, but my parents were liberals and, you know, from the World War II generation. You know, they both grew up in the Depression. So you know, my parents were older, sort of older. You know, my dad was in World War II. So yeah.
What was your peer group?
My peer group were, geez, how old are you talking about? You know, they were neighborhood kids when I was little. And then when I, you know.
I mean, were you like, I guess I'm wondering, like, what type of kids, like the popular kids, the athletic kids, the music kids, or?
I would say that I was in the popular crowd. I was a good athlete. I was pretty gregarious. I was rowdy. I was you know, I was a good student, misbehavior at school. So, you know, as soon as the teacher would turn their back, I'd be on to some mischief, but I would get A's, you know, A's and B's, whatever. Yeah, so I would say I was surrounded by a lot of like, very kind of, my peer group was very sort of normal suburban kids, but thank God I had older sisters because they were bringing in the subversive elements into my life, which was great, like rock and roll and art and just all kinds of stuff like that.
How old were you when you started listening to rock music or your sister's rock records?
You know, my earliest memories are listening to rock records. I was an AM radio freak. You know, I listened to the radio all the time. I watched TV all the time, and that was in an era where you'd come home from school and there'd be the 3:30 movie, and there were always great musicals. You know, I'm a big musical freak. So like from Gypsy to West Side Story to Sound of Music. You know, Sound of Music was actually probably my first record obsession. My mother tells me that I listened to it obsessively, probably when I was 5 or so, 4, 5. And then my sisters were always playing the Beatles and the Monkees and, you know, the Stones and then later Bowie, thank God. And, you know, they had very good musical taste, so they were always bringing in cool stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to skip anything, but so if there's something that you feel like is really important from like elementary or middle school or something, but I kind of just go straight to high school. First of all, when did you start? Did you play an instrument at that age, or like when did you start playing guitar or get interested in playing music, not just listening to music?
Well, I would say when I was a kid, I wanted to be a dancer. I had dance classes. I loved tap a lot. I really wanted to be like in a chorus line somewhere.
Okay.
That's what I really wanted to be when I was little. And I would say even through like 15 years old or something. But I loved rock also. I was waiting for that.
Okay.
And when I was in grammar school, I played the clarinet, And then when I was 16, I convinced my mother to get me an electric guitar for my birthday, and she bought me a $50 used electric guitar. I had seen my sister come home from college, and she was playing guitar a little bit, and I was so fascinated just watching her hands, and I was like, wow, that looks really cool. And even though she never plugged in or anything, she just had a guitar, and she was playing an electric guitar. I would say I always had fantasies of being on stage, whether it be a dancer or a singer, or I never imagined myself to be a guitar player, but I knew I wanted to be in show business or something. You know what I mean? I was very much drawn to that, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me kind of thing, and would fantasize about that a lot while listening to rock. And then, I think that when my sister came home from college with a Ramones record, I think that kind of busted the whole thing open, because that really I was kind of deciding, that was like when I was 15, and I was deciding, am I going to go to college and go that route, or am I going to go just a little more punk and off the rails? And that was the deciding, then I really just started to, just get into, dye my hair and really just, change into sort of what I became now, you know what I mean?
And then, off of that, did your parents support that about you? You said that you always had a need to kind of be on stage or be performing.
Mm-hmm.
And what were their expectations for you? Did they expect you to go to college, or did they support your desire to be a performer?
Well, it's funny because my parents, my mother was very culturally, would turn me on to a lot of things culturally. We would see, we would go to see Broadway plays that would come into Chicago. She would bring me to them. We saw Mikhail Baryshnikov dance. We would go to the Art Institute of Chicago a lot. So she was very, my parents, they're funny, they're very into the arts, especially my mother. My dad was very into jazz. But, and when when their friends' kids went into the arts, they were they thought it was so cool. But their own kids, they really wanted, my dad kept saying, why don't you be an accountant? Why don't you be an accountant? And it was just, up until I was 18 years old, and it was Dad, that ship has sailed so long ago. He didn't quite understand. Sadly, I think he didn't understand that all of his kids were so creative, because all of my sisters were very creative people, and none of them ended up doing that for a living. So I was the one who kind of busted out, moved to LA, and actually kind of made it happen. But I think that both of my parents, being from the Depression, they were don't fuck around with that. My dad's thing was always have something to fall back on, have something to fall back on, and I don't have anything to fall back on. So he was right in that sense, but who wants to have something to fall back on when you're 18? You know what I mean? It's just ugh.
So did you go to college?
No.
Oh, okay, you never. So what did you end up doing after high school? Did you just pursue music?
I knew I wanted to move to LA pretty early on, probably even before I heard the Ramones, when Bowie was in Berlin and stuff, and I was probably in 7th grade or something like that. I was really fascinated with that. I just started to think I want to get the hell out of the south side of Chicago. That's a must. And it was either move to the north side of Chicago, or move to Europe, or move to New York. And then one day after clubbing, I was probably like 16. I was with my friend at Lake Michigan, and it was a beautiful night. It was a beautiful morning, and the wind was blowing off the lake, and I was like, God, it's so beautiful. Where is it like this all the time? And he said, LA, and I was like, LA, and then from then on, it was just like LA, I'm moving to LA. And all I really knew about LA was I loved surf music, and I thought I'd be a surfer.
Yeah.
And that was really it. I didn't know the LA punk scene or anything like that. But after high school, I started working. I had jobs through high school, but I worked to save money to move to LA. So I think I ended up with about $1,200 when I moved to LA.
Okay.
So.
And this is kind of just about your personality, I guess, a little bit. So you're youngest child.
Yes.
Your parents were hoping you would go to college, do
Yes.
something practical.
Yes.
And you saved up $1,200 and decided to move to LA.
Mm-hmm.
Did you always have a feeling that you would succeed in doing something artistic? Because you seem like a pretty confident person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just I guess my question is, did you ever doubt yourself? Or it seems like a big decision for an 18-year-old. I'm gonna move to LA and like play music or start a band.
Well, I think that I did not move out to LA to start a band. That was just, I never thought I'd start a band. That was just completely, and I didn't move to LA to be an actor or anything like that. I was just kind of hoping something might happen. Mm-hmm. Like I might fall into something, which is exactly what did happen. I think my main thing was I've got to get the fuck out of the south side of Chicago, because it's very kind of, it's pretty square on the south side of Chicago. It's not very open-minded on the south side. And even though I was working as a foot messenger in downtown Chicago for a year after I graduated high school, just because I wanted to be in the city. I didn't want to work in the suburbs. I wanted to work in the city. So even though I was making minimum wage, I wanted it to be downtown Chicago. So I think my main objective was to get out of the south side of Chicago, because like I said, I saw my older sisters go the route that my parents wanted them to, and they never got out of the south side of Chicago. I mean, some of them have by now, but like they were kind of there, and I just saw them graduate from college, or take breaks from college every summer and be waitresses. And it was just like, God, these were my heroes, and they were just kind of like towing the line, but squandering their talent, so I didn't think, I had no, I think I had fantasies of being famous or something, but I had no plan of action, and I had no idea what.
Oh, okay.
I had no idea what I would do. I mean, I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be, anything. Give me anything, so, so give me anything, but I didn't study to do any of it. So, you know what I mean? It was just very fantasy talk, but.
And then, what did you do when you got out here? Like, how was it?
When I got out here, my sister had gone to college with a gal who had moved out here, and she let me stay on her couch for a month until I found my own place in Hollywood. And I started dating a guy who worked at the LA Weekly. He was like one of the, he was in charge of he was the dispatch guy for all the messengers that would deliver the papers. Okay. So he got me a job doing that. Like a part-time job after a while. I was working at the Egyptian Theater, like popping popcorn, literally, and making minimum wage on Hollywood Boulevard. And then I got a job at the Weekly, and then the people in the art department liked me because I dressed wild and I was friendly, and I think they just got a kick out of me. I was 19, and and they said, "Hey, do you want to work in the art department?" And I was like, yeah, hell yeah. How do you do it? And that's when you would lay out, it was paced up basically. It wasn't like I wasn't doing anything super artistic. It was just called the art department, production, whatever. But so they taught me how to lay out, wax the stuff and lay it out and make sure it's straight with the T-square. And so then I was working in the art department at the LA Weekly, and that kind of opened up a whole world to me too.
What kind of, just networking or meeting different kinds of people?
Well, my boyfriend was very, he knew the punk scene a lot. So I was kind of meeting kind of the after hours crowd through him. But at the LA Weekly, I met a lot of people who were artists and like who were writers, people in bands, people who, just artists of all kinds, So that was cool because it just, it gives me a network of people I still encounter today and still run into today. And
was that early 80s?
Yeah, that was 83.
Okay, and then L7 you started in 85?
Yeah.
Was L7 your first band?
No.
Okay. What was your first band?
I had a couple other bands. One was called, my first band was called the Debbies.
Okay.
And I did that on a dare. A woman who worked at the LA Weekly, who was a little bit older than me, and she was a drummer, and she was a punk rocker, and she heard I played guitar, and she said, come on, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Come on down. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have an amp. I'm not good enough. And she's like, well, you've got to be better than Susie Gardner.
That's nice.
My bandmate and future partner. So that was her big, and I didn't even know Susie. It's like, who's this Susie Gardner? But she said, well, you've got to be better than Susie Gardner. So I went down and I got into the Debbies, and we just played covers like Venus and, she's got it. Yeah, baby, she's got it. Shit like that. And we wore house coats and curlers. And it was just a shtick. And it was just silly. And it was all female. And then I started a band with the art department of the LA Weekly called the Shrews after that. And that was just kind of fun. I think we wanted to be the B-52s. And that was just kind of fun party rock, with some feminist lyrics in there too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did people go to your shows? I mean, did you like draw a crowd, or what was the scene like then in LA in the early 80s?
The scene in the LA 80s was very jumbled, you know what I mean? Like you had people who were doing kind of performance art rock, kind of like my bands were, just, with the shtick and like, and there was a lot of, the scene that I was in and the scene that Susie was in was a scene that was like rock mixed with people who wanted to put on a show kind of thing. And they were artists, so it wasn't the heavy metal scene or anything like that. It was kind of the Silver Lake bohemian scene. And so some of the bands were very arty and some of them were very goofy. And then in LA in general, there was a cowpunk scene, there was hardcore punk rock, which I was never really into. But it was there wasn't a solid scene. It was just kind of, but we all played at the same clubs, but it was just kind of all over the place, you know what I mean?
And can you talk about how you got everyone together to form L7?
Susie, I got to know who Susie was because she was now dating the guy who had gotten me the job at the LA Weekly. She was now dating him. Yes. And she had worked at the LA Weekly. She got my sloppy seconds as a boyfriend, but I got her sloppy seconds with her jobs.
Oh, that's a better deal, I think.
So I got her sloppy seconds. She had worked at the LA Weekly in the art department. She had worked at a place I was part-time waitressing at called Millie's. She had worked there before I did. And she had been in the Debbies before me. So, and I started to know who she was because she was cocktail waitressing at Raji's, this club, And, but she was very different than me. She was really kind of wild in this one way, and I was wild in another way. And, but that mutual boyfriend said, oh no, maybe it was somebody else from the LA Maybe I think there were probably a few friends that said, you and Susie should play together. Because I was in the Shrews, and I wanted to play something harder. I was sick of fucking around. You know, we were just nobody could play in the band, really. And it was just kind of, I mean, they played a little bit, but it wasn't like a serious thing. It was just friends basically doing drugs and putting on a show, you know what I mean? So, so I went over to Susie's apartment in Silver Lake, her tiny little studio, and she played me a cassette of some stuff that she was working on, and I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to be playing. This is exactly the kind of shit I want to play, which was a little bit Stooges, a little bit Motorhead, a little sludgy. It was just hard rock without being metal, and that's really kind of what I wanted to do. So, and nobody was really doing that very much. It was kind of, everything was very new wave and light, and or really hardcore punk, or roots, cowpunky, rockabilly stuff, or country. So this was something I really wanted to do. Which is interesting because I was never into that music when I was growing up. So
never into hard rock.
I don't think I was. I don't think I was exposed to the Stooges until probably I moved to LA till I was 19 or so. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really. I knew who Iggy was. I had seen Iggy many times in Chicago, but he was playing other stuff by then. But yeah.
And then you said that when you met Susie, you heard that, or she was weird in one way and you were weird and crazy in another way. Like, can you just explain what you mean by that? Like, look, acting crazy or dressing crazy, or?
Susie was wild in a. I think Susie was a lot more sexually promiscuous than I was. She was a girl, and she was very. I say this in our documentary. She was a fishnets girl. You know what I mean? She was always, you know, like Susie was wasted a lot, and I think sexually promiscuous, and she was. Like I was kind of more goofy. Like I'd wear Coca-Cola pants, and we have these wild crazy mismatched pop culture references. Outfits and stuff, and Susie was very more classic punk, fishnets, miniskirt kind of gal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you described yourself in an interview I just read. You said in the early and mid '80s, and like when L7 was just starting, that you described yourself as being kind of androgynous. And that Susie was like really.
I still am.
You still think, yeah.
Yeah. I mean. Kinda. I mean, I don't know. I consider myself androgynous. Yeah. I mean, a lot, most of the time. Yeah, I don't think Susie was as androgynous as I was. No.
And what were other girls or women involved in the music scene? What was like the overall style like? Like, was your androgyny kind of different than how other women were like dressing or acting, or?
Well, I always go against the fashion trend. Yeah. It's just not my, you know what I mean? Once everybody starts doing it, I go, you know what I mean? Like I kind of, I don't follow trends, you know? So like in the 80s when everybody had like big hair and, you know, I had like, you know, I went more for like 60s mod. I had, bangs, long hair, 60s mod with like, 70s, a Kiss backpack and like platforms and just like a mashup of fashion. But it's weird because in my life I go through different periods of sometimes looking very androgynous. Sometimes 60s mod or wearing mini dresses and stuff and like. So it's weird, I go back and forth. It's just kind of, I go back and forth, so.
But you don't like trends.
I don't like trends at all.
I kind of got that.
Some people are like, oh, it's really in fashion now. I'm like, oh, God.
Really don't do
totally. It's like, ooh, really? God damn it. I used to like that look. Not anymore, so, yeah. So.
Okay, so you and Susie got together. You liked the tape. And said,
yes.
I really like your playing. And then how did you recruit the other members for L7? Can you talk about just getting together, practicing, when you started, like when you played your first show, what the reception was like?
Well, first off, Susie, another thing, another thing about Susie was that she didn't want to do anything political whatsoever. She was just very apolitical person at the time. She's not anymore, but at the time she was very apolitical. She just wanted to rock. Yeah. She was very, she always wanted to be in a rock band. She always wanted to be, she loved Heart. She grew up in Sacramento. She was just, that was probably why she moved to LA. I was just like, yeah, let's just, go for it,
Yeah.
So my first songs that I wrote for L7 were just very kind of dunderhead rock, because I really wanted to play with Susie, but I wanted to show her, because I had a reputation of being a feminist and kind of outspoken about it, because LA was pretty dunderhead at the time, to be honest. It was really I thought I was moving to LA I thought growing up, when you became an adult, all of a sudden you were going to be around enlightened people because you chose your own crowd. Yeah. I did not find that in Los Angeles. I felt really I wasn't connecting really with people. I was making friends, but not, not the kind of friends one would maybe make at college, which is where you're discussing ideas and political things, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We didn't discuss that shit, you know what I mean? So my first few songs with Susie were just, let's rock to, which I'm so mortified by now, but it was to prove to her, hey, I can be, I'm not always,
I can be fun.
I can be fun. I can be just rock, but so that was kind of funny, but and we went through many years of Susie and I, just her and I. Okay. And we would change, our drummers were always quitting on us. Our bass players were always quitting on us. It was just years of struggle, really, her and I.
Were you always planning on having an all-female band, or did you have male members at first?
Our first drummer was a guy, and on our first record, he plays on our first record. Mm-hmm. We didn't care. It was, but at the time, it was a situation of the kind of rock we wanted to play. Dudes who wanted to play that kind of rock didn't want to play with chicks. That was my kind of, that's what I gathered out of our experience. And chicks were not that into playing what we were playing. Yeah. So we were kind of in a bit of a predicament there, because we were playing a hard sort of rock that a lot of female musicians that we knew weren't really interested in playing. So.
Well, this is kind of a question I had for a little later on, but this sort of fits into it. When I look back at, or when I read about L7, you're one of the few bands where it seems to have been an issue that you were all women. Retrospectively, I don't read a lot about L7 the all-girl band or the all-female band. It's just L7 the rock band, or you get lumped into grunge or something. Mm-hmm. But at the time, was it an issue, or was it something that people talked about or pointed out a lot, that you were all women, or mostly women at first?
Well, let me just give you an example. Our first record, it was just titled L7. Mm-hmm. And there was another band in LA called Hardly Dangerous, and they were an all-female band, and they were kind of a metal band, but they were not from our scene. We were not from their scene. They happened to put out a record that was distributed by the same people that were distributing our record. So the distributor took out a joint ad that said, Hardly Dangerous and L7, 2 good reasons to get rock hard. And I remember I was working at the LA Weekly, and Jonathan Gold, who's now a very famous food critic, he was working at the LA Weekly at the time, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, Donita, good to know your distributor isn't sexist." And he shows me that ad, and I just like, bah, like the steam came out of my ears, because it was just like, fuck, because I deliberately had our name be non-gender specific. Those were conscious decisions. I did not want anything with girls or any play on words or double entendre or anything like that. I wanted it to be, you hear us, you don't know who the fuck we are. You know what I mean? You're just hearing a really good rock band, and they might be pleasantly surprised that we're female. You know what I mean? So we never wanted to be promoted that way. We refused all female articles. They would always try to lump us in with like, hey, it's the women in rock issue. We would refuse. Very early on we'd do it because we needed some exposure, but once we started to get some momentum, I cut that off. I was like, we're not doing that, so because I felt we deserved our own article, you know what I mean? Yeah. That wasn't lumped in with all these other poontang, it's like they always try to do that. So yeah, that was an issue. That was an issue. But not from other bands per se. It was an issue with the Squares, who were like the people who were kind of the media, the suits of whatever stripe, they were the ones who were really hung up on this all-girl thing, and it's like other bands didn't give a shit, you know what I mean? They were supportive, so yeah. But
did you always have a good mix of fans too? It always seems like
yes.
you've had an equal number.
Yeah. We've always had
women.
a very good mix of fans. Dudes really love us. Chicks really love us. I think we're one of the few bands that has crossed over genre-wise, as far as, we just played all these hard rock festivals in Europe. We were the only females on that, I think, I think that there was a band. I saw some women walking around, and they were very, very sexy gals, and I think that they were in a band maybe like earlier on in the day or something, but like on the main stage, we were the only females on the main stage. Yeah. So it's like, it's much different than the Coachella scene or whatever, but like we can kind of go back in between the metal people liked us, mm-hmm. the punk people liked us, the artist people liked us, the feminists liked us. So, I think that we're kind of unique in that way. And I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything like that. It's it's like for reals. So
no, I agree. Yeah, and you're one of the only bands that I can think of made up of women who can do that.
Yeah. So it's kind of, so that's really fucking cool. That's like, and it's so funny because you mentioned that about, female or, the descriptives. Mm-hmm. For years, it was all female band. And then it was sub pop band, L7, we were always like, or grunge band, And then I remember we were playing in Europe once and it just said, L7 Rock USA. And we were yes, I saved it. And our roadie had it on his, because in Europe they'll say like, Einstatten Neubauten, Rock, Germany, or, and it just says, and it would, there'd always be something that would get on our fucking nerves, like all female or grunge or sub pop. And then that one time, and then pretty much after that, it was Rock USA. Yeah. So it's kind of, I remember that moment as being like, yes.
Yeah.
We did it. You know what I mean? We've transcended all of this bullshit. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I mean, well, I don't have anything specific to ask about that L7 start.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like you got, you started in 85, and in 91, you were at that peak, you're at like a really high point in your career. I mean, can you just talk about like those first 4 or 5 years or so?
Yeah.
Like until you did Rock for Choice.
Well, let me just back up for a second. You know, Susie and I really struggled with we were playing with a bunch of people who were, you know, I would say at times unstable and such, and just kind of like, it was really kind of depressing. You know, it was very kind of dark. And then Jennifer saw us play a show, and she really kind of muscled her way into the band. She really wanted to be in the band, and like, she didn't even play really. She said she played bass, but she wasn't. She didn't play, you know.
Well, didn't she play with Courtney Love and Kat and that whatever?
I'm not going to count.
Of
She didn't. Her boyfriend and I taught her how to play bass.
Okay.
I mean, you know, so I think, I don't know what she was doing with Courtney and Kat, but but Jennifer had a lot of moxie, and she wanted to be in a band, and she had just moved back to LA, and she convinced me to let her play bass. So she was just very like, you know, I was like, oh yeah, whatever happens. Susie was like, oh, I'd love to have my dream happen. I was like, yeah, whatever happens. And Jennifer was very much wanted to be in our band. So I let her, and then we taught her, and then she was great, and she had a lot of moxie, and she had a lot of drive, and she knew people, you know what I mean? She grew up in LA, so she knew some people, and so then it started to pick up momentum, you know, like I've said this before, like, you know, she joined the band, and within 2 weeks we had stickers, and it was like, oh my God, we have stickers? Like, whoa, that's like huge, you know? So, so even though we were playing shows before her, you know, then she was in the band, and things started to slowly happen. And then when we got Dee in the band, that was after our first record. That was when things really started to roll, because she's such a great drummer, and was really the difference between, you know, we were picking up steam anyway, but the addition of Dee was like magic, and that happened in '88. So that's when it really.
Oh, I didn't realize she didn't join until.
Yeah, she didn't join until '88. She wasn't on her first record, so you know, we didn't have Dee for 3 years.
I knew that it wasn't her.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that your first drummer was a guy.
Yeah.
I think I just never paid attention.
Yeah. We airbrushed him off our first album cover.
Wait, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, because I'm like, why did I not know that?
It was a very early edition of airbrushing, I think, but we had him removed from the photo on the back cover of the record. Yeah. And then after that, we decided we wanted to be all female, because he would get drunk, call us bitches, had trouble with authority. You know, he was a nice guy when he was sober, and very helpful, and kind of macho in a cool way. You know, like, oh, let me carry, you know, like, let me carry that for you. You know, which was cool. You know, he was really kind of built, and we kind of felt like he had our back and stuff. But then when he would get drunk, you know, the resentments would come out. It would just get kind of ugly. But so then, we got Dee, and then we got on Sub Pop after that, and that's when Sub Pop was really kind of rolling.
Was that after your first record?
Our first record came out in '87.
Okay.
And we did our first national tour opening for Bad Religion in '88, and that was without Dee. And then Dee joined the band in the winter of '88, I think, and then we got involved in the Sub Pop people, and our record came out. You know, we put out a single, and that hit Europe, and all of a sudden we were touring Europe, because their singles club was so popular. And we were January of 1990 was our single of the month club. And then we did an EP for them that year, and then and then we got signed to a major label.
Which were you on?
We were on Slash, which was an indie label out of LA who had a deal with Warner Brothers Reprise.
Yeah.
And then '92 our album came out, and that was like worldwide, you know. You know, we had representation in Japan, South America, you know, everywhere. So that's when it really kind of blew open.
You'd mentioned earlier the Debbies and the bands that you played with in LA, that there were a lot of like drugs and partying, and so you would just like party and play shows, and it wasn't that serious. Was there still like a lot of drugs and partying even when you were in L7? Like you were doing something seriously and signed and touring. Was that still like a big part of like the culture, the musical?
Well, Susie's been sober since since before we recorded that record. Susie got sober in like 86. So she's been sober for a really long time. So she went from being the drunk fishnet girl.
Yeah.
She cleaned up her act before we were even, she got her shit together. The rest I will not speak of. There was still a lot of partying in the sense that, we were taking it seriously. We wanted it to happen, but it was all such baby stepping that if we had started out saying, "Oh, we're gonna be in this big rock band and we're gonna put out records and it's gonna be, we want to get huge," that would just have been so ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, for us, it was, okay, let's get a bass player. We got to get a bass player. Then we need a new drummer. Let's get a show. Let's try to get a show at Raji's. Oh, it's a Wednesday night. Let's try to headline a Wednesday night. Let's try to get a Friday night, headline a Friday night. So it was just these tiny steps. Like anywhere along the way, if you had said, oh, you're going to be playing a soccer stadium in South America to 90,000 people who are all going to be cheering and singing your songs, it would have been like, come on, give me a fucking break, but it just happened, so, yeah. So we were still fucking around, and I think that our era, sometimes fucking around was kind of appreciated by the fans because you weren't some of the pretensions got dropped. Yeah. But then at the same time, I think we could have taken things a little more seriously because I think we fucked around too much. Not in the drug sense, but just in the, this is going to last forever kind of sense. Yeah. Oh, we can fuck around. This is just going to, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you can't drop the ball on that shit. You just...
Well, and other people that I've interviewed, they said that like partying and drugs also sometimes just helps the misery of touring, like, which actually isn't that enjoyable. I think it sounds, it's kind of, like the tour fantasy. I romanticize it a lot and it sounds great, but I haven't really heard a lot of good stories about touring, just how difficult it is.
Yeah, it is difficult. I would say I drank every night.
Yeah.
I would say that was part of the
thing. It's like, what else do? You spend most of your days driving to get, or flying to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you're there, and then you play for an hour.
Yeah.
And then what?
Well, it's weird because to be constantly around people is not my is not in my makeup at all. I'm very kind of a loner in the sense of I like my solitude, and so to be in a van with like 3 bandmates, 2 roadies, or a roadie and a couple friends coming along or whatever, all sleeping on top of each other in sleeping bags. I mean, we toured the first 5 years in sleeping bags in a van, and crashing on people's floors with our sleeping bags. So to be in that kind of a situation is not in my nature, and yet I really enjoyed it. And they say force yourself out of the box or whatever. I had to, and so I was. And I don't know if that's because I had 3 older sisters, and there was just always people. There were always people around, but I'm really glad I was forced to do that because that was an incredible experience. And touring is an incredible experience for me because I'm just, I don't hang out that much, Oh, Rock for Choice. We never got to Rock for Choice.
I know. I was like, I hope we didn't.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about that. I didn't realize that. I mean, in 90, I was like really young in 91. So I got into you guys a little later, but I remember like watching Rock for Choice on MTV and stuff. And not until I got older, I didn't realize that you had started it, that it was like L7's concert that lasted for a decade.
Yeah.
So
that's D. That's D on the logo.
Yeah.
That's D because I had a vision of having the guitar smash, very much like the Clash, London Call. I don't know what album that is or whatever, but I was like, D, you be the model because you're skinnier than I am and you'll look better as the logo. And she did it. She posed as it. And her husband created the logo, and we met with the Feminist Majority Foundation, and we met at a conference table with them in their offices, and we said we want to do a benefit. And I had done benefits before with the Shrews, my other band.
Yeah.
Rock Against Coat Hangers, it was called. No, few people came. But, I always wanted to, L7 was playing benefits for Greenpeace and a lot of other things. And the shit was really hitting the fan with the clinics under attack. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, let's do a benefit. Oh, there's no organization really to do it for, so let's get this thing going with the Feminist Majority Foundation. I think we had a friend who connected us with them, maybe a journalist. And so, and they wanted to have, they threw out a lot of names of some 1960s people and 70s people who were their, basically the benefit go-to people, the people who are so cool that they'll just do no nukes and, they're the go-to people. And we were hearing those names and we were like, well, we know this band called Nirvana and they're really kind of blowing up right now. And so that was the first concert with Nirvana, L7, Hole, and Sister Double Happiness.
That was 1991. So Nirvana, they weren't Nirvana yet?
Bleach had come out on Sub Pop. And the bidding war happened, and they had just finished recording their record, but it hadn't been released yet. So, Nevermind hadn't been released yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but they were already huge in the underground, but they just weren't known by mainstream yet. So,
and I avoid him all the time, but it's been very weird because everyone that I've interviewed so far, Nirvana comes up. And Kurt Cobain comes up. I think just because he was such a proponent, he was a feminist kind of guy. And then I saw, Dave Grohl filled in for drums for you guys once. I'm not sure if it was the Rock for Choice or if it was a different.
No, it was a rally against Desert Storm.
Okay.
And it was at City Hall in downtown LA, and it was, Daddy Bush was just starting that war, and so it was an anti-war rally for that.
Because I was going to ask how Nirvana helped L7, but it seems like they weren't famous. You were famous before them.
No, they were. They were the. I don't know. Some people, they were number one in the underground. Yeah. You know what I mean? We were probably number two in the underground.
Okay.
Some people may argue that, and some people may say, "Oh my God, you're so arrogant for even saying that." But I would say at times for a hot fucking minute, we were hot shit in the underground. But I think that they were always, bigger than us,
but
probably more popular.
Always friends of yours. It seemed like you guys were always kind of helping each other.
Yeah, I don't think we met them until 1990.
Okay.
So they had a couple. I think they were together a year or two. I heard their record Bleach on a cassette, and that's how I knew about them. So they were already people were playing their shit because they were so good, you know.
All right. We already did. Oh, I'm asking this question because have you ever looked at your Wikipedia page?
I haven't. My sister bitches to me about it all the time.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's like fucking stupid.
I don't know what to do. What do I fucking do about it? Somebody help me out.
Like update Wikipedia. We actually did that in the archives because women are so underrepresented even on like Wikipedia. So I can do it. I can fix it.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, I don't know how to do it. It's like I hear it's terrible.
Really, yeah, it's really confusing and kind of annoying, but
I hear it's
I'll
terrible.
do it because I was so disappointed.
Oh, that would be great.
All it says is
I threw a tampon.
Like you were yes.
Is that it? Yeah.
That you were in L7 and you threw a tampon. So I'm like, I don't know if she's gonna test. I'm gonna ask about the tampon though.
Okay.
And my question is like, what's worse about throwing a tampon in the crowd than like Ozzy Osbourne biting the head off a bat or Gigi Allen throwing his feces at people? Like, why do you think you are remembered and that the main point of your Wikipedia page is that you threw a tampon into the audience once?
Well, I can't speak for Wikipedia because I don't know who's updating that shit. But first I'll say no animals were harmed in my act of defiance. And I don't think it's as gross as feces.
No.
And I think, for a while I was like, oh God, because it would come up all the time, and I was just like, geez, am I ever going to live this down? And now I'm really, I think it's really funny. And I mean, I thought it was funny at the time too, but young women are throwing painted tampons on stage to us now. And,
they are?
Yes, and I got somebody threw a T-shirt in Germany up on stage, and it says like, I haven't looked it up yet. It's like, and it's got a tampon. So it's like some chick's band with their logo as a tampon, and so it's like, okay, cool. I'll take that. I'll take credit for that. So I think now it's just becoming. The young gals in particular really have embraced the tampon incident. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why it's the only thing in Wikipedia though. So.
Well, there was I read an article. There was another controversy. You mentioned the tampon, and then you took down your pants on that TV show.
I did.
Yeah, and so there was a really good quote. And you said, look, I got shit for being a feminist my whole life. In the 80s, they said I was dogmatic. I was just a very androgynous artist. Steven Tyler and Mick Jagger admit to channeling women when they perform. Isn't that revolutionary? Taking down my trousers didn't feel sexual. I may as well have said I'm a eunuch. And the NME tore into you because, you didn't take your pants off in, a sexy Madonna way that you just did.
Yes.
So, the things that you do are subversive because it's not, sexy? Maybe? That's what I think.
I don't think I use the word I'm not sure I use the word eunuch. That could be a misquote, but that's hilarious. Yes, NME, I remember them really just, but they'll slag you for anything over there in England. Yeah. It's just they're the worst, they'll just say something just to be controversial, so, the writer was, if Madonna had dropped her pants, it would be for some reason or something. It's sorry, I like absurdity, know? We were playing a live television show. How many times are you on live television? And there had just been a bum contest of men walking around with their pants off, not showing, with banana hammocks on, but their asses out. So it was just I was just fuck it, but it was frontal. I had frontal and, it was, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it seems like the tampon thing and the pants thing is because you didn't do it in a, specific way.
You know, listen, to me, it's like, first of all, I love absurdity.
Yeah.
Second of all, we were, you know, sometimes you're in a surreal situation, and like, you know, I used to do performance art in the 80s, you know, and like, sometimes, you know, they were throwing mud at us at Reading. So I went performance art on their ass, and I fucking threw a tampon. And that's a little bit John Waters, too. You know, it's kind of, it's sort of so many things that it was an act that had many influences, right? It had like, when I break it down, it's like, okay, it was feminist, it was performance art, it was John Waters, you know, it was defiant and funny and feminist all at the same time, you know, and it was coming out of like a really surreal moment where you're on stage in front of tens of thousands of people, and you sound, you know, your sound is off and people are throwing mud at you. So it's like, you know, sometimes, was it a meltdown? No, it was just an idea I had at the spur of the moment that turned out to be to linger.
Legacy.
That's right, my legacy on Wikipedia. So, but you know, now people are throwing fake tampons at us, and like, you know, naming their band after tampons and stuff. You know what I mean? As a sign of empowerment.
Yeah.
Which is
I
like
think
super cool.
Yeah, for women, it was a really empowering thing. And
I think it was.
It like goes to show how uncomfortable people are with menstruation as well.
Well, you know, it's a pretty disgusting thing, you know, no doubt. I mean, you know, but it's like...
Yeah, it's gross, but I keep thinking of like Gigi Allen.
I don't think anybody was pleased with Gigi Allen throwing his feces into the audience.
Yeah, no, not pleased, but just that, I don't know, I feel like it's still, it's kind of accepted as just, as his legacy, like throwing shit at people. And isn't that cool? And
right. I think that is kind of his legacy, but yeah, I don't know. You know, I did it once. It's written every time somebody writes something about me, that's mentioned. My mother hasn't mentioned it to me yet, so I don't know if she's read it yet.
She never ever mentioned it.
No, and that was kind of my big fear, because my mother's not a prude, but she would find that very, very distasteful. She used to say to me all the time as a kid, "You're rude, crude, and ignorant." And I think that she would find that act all three of those things. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. She's probably heard it by now, but she's never mentioned it to me. So.
I'm sure she's heard it.
Yeah.
Just never talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, so L7 never broke up.
No.
You just went on a forever hiatus until.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
But can you talk a little bit about if there's anything that I missed or that you think is important about your time together before it kind of dissolved around like 2001? Or I think you just put something on your website that you were on an indefinite hiatus.
I would say that because I would just like to say, I suppose, that I feel that we had a lot of support from men on the scene. You know, so like on a scene level, we were appreciated. You know what I mean? Male and female appreciated us. And the only people who were like naysayers were negative creep kind of people anyway. So I don't know if it's mostly women who are going to be watching this or
I don't know. I hope it's everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly women.
Yeah, but you know, so it's kind of, I don't want there to be, you know, you know, I think some of the Riot Girl movement is very much like they had to do their own thing because there was no other route for them, and I didn't feel that way. So yeah, that's
Yeah, it seemed like you were supported by everyone.
yeah. I mean, because people thought we were cool.
Yeah.
People thought we were a good band. People thought we were unique. So we were. We always wanted to do a Men of L7 calendar because our roadies, because our friends were just so great and they'd roadie for us for free and and we just always would joke about that, and I wish we had done that. We may still have to do that at some point.
I know, you can now.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Riot Girl, and I noticed this is another retrospective look back. When I read a lot of academic articles, and there's a lot of people writing about Riot Girl at the moment, because it seems like 25 years after something happens, then it can be historicized. So there's a lot about Riot Girl happening right now. And I noticed that a lot of times your name kind of gets lumped into the Riot Girl category. You'll pop up there, or Hole or something, and but you weren't aligned with the Riot Girl movement. And I'm just wondering your thoughts. Why do you think that you sometimes will get lumped into Riot Girl? Or because I think that L7's music is kind of hard to categorize. I think it's pretty much just hard rock, and grunge was happening at the time, so I can understand why you'd get pushed into the grunge category. Yeah. But do you find retrospectively that you get lumped in with Riot Girl because you're an all-female band? Is that something you've noticed, or it could just be me from doing research?
Well, I think that to people who don't know what the Riot Girl movement was, they could misconstrue L7 as an archetype of Riot Girl. I'm the one who threw the tampon. Where our audiences were literally riots. Crazy stage diving mayhem. Our audiences were absolute mayhem. So, we dressed very grungy. We dressed very, our hair was ratted. Our hair was dirty and dreaded and clumped, and, our clothes were torn. None of us knew how to sew. We would duct tape our pants closed, that's, so I think that we are kind of, for people who don't know what Riot Girl was exactly, that it came from a college campus, and that we're urban, we're from a city. We weren't from a college atmosphere. So I think one could look at L7 and say, oh, total Riot Girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, so yeah.
How do you categorize L7? Which
Rock USA.
Yeah, Rock USA. That's what you're most comfortable
Rock
with.
USA. Not even the USA part. How do I categorize this? I would say that we are a hard punk, grunge, yet melodic band.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have sing-along choruses and stuff like that. So, we didn't go for complete noise abrasion. We went for heaviness without the wanky leads, but melody in there that you could, I like pop, I like punk, Susie likes blues and some metal, so it's kind of mashup.
Yeah. And I definitely deviated from the. You just talk about the dissolution of L7, and then what you did after your indefinite hiatus.
The disillusion of L7. We just there was no money, there was no support. We were dropped from our label. We fired our manager. It was just the wheels fell off kind of thing.
So you never, did you ever make any money? That always surprises me because you were someone that I listened to and like I thought of as really successful, and it seems like it's really hard to make a living even if you're on a major label or were on a major label.
You know, we had a manager taking 20% off the top of everything, pre-expenses. Mm-hmm. We had, you know, everybody gets a cut before the band does. We never sold a million records. I think Bricks Are Heavy sold 350,000 records. That does not set you up. That doesn't do shit. So, you know, I would say that a little money has come in because we've been on some video games, and you know, Shit List was in Natural Born Killers, just a little bit, but not enough to support the band or anything like that. So, no, we didn't. You know. Then there are bands like White Zombie who sell a few million records and they're set up for life, you know? So it's kind of, and yet, is our name as big as White Zombie? Is our name bigger than White Zombie? I don't know, but it's like, I don't know. You know, is White Zombie, and I'm friends with those guys, but is their name mentioned in articles these days? I don't know, but they're, you know, they made money. We didn't make money. So, because we didn't sell records. But I don't say we didn't sell records. I say our record company didn't sell records because we busted our ass. We worked really hard, and we toured a lot and wrote some good songs. I never understood why we didn't get bigger because I was like, well, shit, we've got catchy songs. Like, you know, what's the problem? So I don't know if mainstream media, if they were ready for us. I don't know if they're still ready for us, but yeah, maybe we were just too, I don't know. Sometimes I think we were too threatening, but that could be just crazy talk, but I don't know. We did, you know, we didn't wear makeup or we wore fright makeup. You know, it's like, you know, how are you going to deal with that? If you're, you know, where does that fit?
So, and that was a big part of you guys deciding not to do it anymore? I mean, because it sounds stressful. It sounds like a lot of work, and it seems like you were always touring, and then if you're not making money.
We were 40 and had no health insurance.
Yeah. And
had no savings. Had nothing. So what do? You have to reassess your life at that point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Figure something else out. And you know, I called it a hiatus because I always said I would never do a reunion.
Yeah.
I will never do a reunion. And so I was like, if this band is broken up, you know, so I was like, I'll put it on a hiatus. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what did you do between 2001 and then you started the Stellar Moments in like 05 or 06?
Yeah.
Right. So, well, you mentioned earlier when we started talking that, I say this all the time too, that your parents were always like, have something to fall back on and you have nothing to fall back on.
Correct.
Like, no, I guess, practical skills or something.
Mm-hmm.
But is music and art, do you, like, after L7, you're not making any money, can't do that anymore. Is art and music, is that like your passion, or is it something at this point too that you feel like this is what you can do, that is, like, because you don't have anything to fall back on, you know what I mean? So is it kind of just like, oh, I have to do this because I didn't take mom and dad's advice or something?
You know.
Or a little bit of both, maybe.
You know, I know Kristen Hirsch.
Yeah.
And I know her work ethic. And I know she has to do it. I don't have to do it. I'm a creative person. I think of creative things all the time. That's just kind of my nature. I have the worst work ethic probably of anyone I know. I'm a lazy motherfucker, and like, if I weren't lazy, I'd probably have a body of work that could probably be pretty cool, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I'm just, you know, it took me 4 years to make that Stellar Moments record, you know what I mean? Like, but that was very difficult. I had no support system. Thank God I had Dee. She was playing drums for me and helping me record. We did all that stuff ourselves, but you know, because I don't, I work best under pressure, and because there's no record company putting me under pressure to write songs, I don't write songs. I'll make some musical things sometimes, but like, I I go in spurts.
Yeah.
I don't wake up and go into the studio every day or go into the study and write or anything like that. I'm just terrible. So I'm terrible at it. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's because I'm the baby and I'm spoiled or where that comes from, but
You said, I'll just read a quote of yours. And I forget where it comes from. Maybe like Rolling Stone or something. I don't know. But it says, when they split after 6 albums in 2001, we were on the cusp of the digital age, but it seemed as if L7 disappeared completely. And then you said if you Googled L7, there was nothing. I found myself asking, did L7 exist, or am I a brain and a bat making all of this up?
Yeah.
The Guardian. So, yeah, I guess your thoughts on that, on kind of being forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And like the reunion starting to play again.
Well, I think that, because we were so, you couldn't find stuff on us on the internet. I mean, it was just like, you'd Google L7 and, Motorola phone would come up or something. And it was like, where the fuck are we? And I remember this one article would always pop up from like East Coast Rocker or something. It was like, L7, some tough bitches. And that was like the headline of this article. And that was the only thing that was coming up. And it was just like, really? Is that our fucking legacy? Like this one East Coast Rocker thing? But, and then it was also, there were a couple bands that were remembered from women in rock of the 90s that were always the spokespeople for women in rock of the 90s. And I sort of had a problem with that, because it was like two people speaking for all of us. And it was like, well, wait a minute, hold on, I just felt it was frustrating to me for years, So I kind of feel like we're taking back the narrative a little bit on that because, there were others out there. There was a whole fleet of women playing music in the 90s, and to have two people be the spokespeople constantly is just like, what the fuck, what I mean? Can we get Kim Deal to chime in on something over here, please? So yeah, I think it's cool. And now all the young kids are finding out about us and spreading it around and wearing our shirts and coming to our shows and I think it's very inspirational to them because I've heard from young people like, wow, like you guys, the 90s were so amazing with all the women playing in rock bands and all the all-female bands. Like the all-female band has gone sort of not extinct, but it's just not what it was back in the 90s, Yeah. So, and that's fine. Now it's more mixed or whatever, but I just think that there's maybe a little bit of a, I think people want to get pissed off again. Yeah. And they should be pissed off about a lot of shit. So, I think they look to women of the 90s, and I think it's one of grunge's greatest legacy is actually the killing off of misogyny in rock for quite a while. I mean, really, it was very passé to be a misogynist in rock there for a while. So, and that was helped by guys like the the guys in Nirvana and the guys in Pearl Jam and bands like us and Babes in Toyland and Lunatics and, you know, so, and then Riot Girl later, you know, so, yeah, I think that's a big deal.
And you mentioned it earlier, and I have very mixed feelings about it as well, but with all of that being said, how do you feel about the category of like women in rock or women of rock? Do you think it's necessary in a way? Or do you think it's useless and, you know, we shouldn't have to label women musicians or women in rock as women in rock?
I mean, it depends on who you're talking about. Because a lot of times they say women in rock and they say Patsy Cline. And it's like, what? You know, like,
Yeah.
I remember VH1 had like 100 or 50 top female, you know, rockers. And it's like Patsy Cline. And it was just very strange.
Or
And
that Rolling and Stone cover, it's Madonna, Courtney Love, and Tina Turner. It's that famous Women of Rock.
Yeah, and there was a, you know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame had this traveling thing of women in rock that went to the Experience Museum in Seattle. And I took a tour of that because I was actually playing in a band with Kathy Valentine up there celebrating women in rock.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you know, Madonna's bra and Rihanna's corset.
Yeah.
And all these, like, you know, torture contraptions for women in this women, you know, I'm exaggerating, but, you know, I mean, really, it's like...
I guess I'm talking about, like, this project, for instance, which I was really torn about, like, what to name it.
Right.
But I wanted people to know that I was just interviewing women, like, I'm not interviewing
Right.
male musicians. And I really am sticking to rock music.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that they're, you know, do I think Lydia is an important artist? Yeah, I do. Do I think Kristen is an important artist? Yes, I do. You know, these people should be on tape, and they should be, you know, because other people's contributions kind of start to weigh out, and it's like, you know, yeah, if you can afford to have a publicist like 24/7, yeah, you're going to be in the media a lot, you know. But people who don't have those kind of resources kind of fall by the wayside, and it's, you know, their voices are not heard. So, yeah, it seems like you're covering underground women in rock.
Yeah.
A lot, which is maybe a different, a bit more subversive than women in rock, which can be very broad, no pun intended.
That was
So,
a good
yeah.
one, by the way.
See?
And I always feel really rude asking this, and I don't mean to be rude, but I asked Veruca Salt in like the worst way possible.
Oh, God.
But just being a woman, performing loud, you know, you play loud music, and it's been a while, so like you've aged.
Mm-hmm.
Are you conscious of, or is it something that you think about? We were talking about like vanity and stuff earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, is it something that you're self-conscious about? Do you think about it? Do you not think about it? I don't think it's something that's an issue for guys. I think it's something that comes up a lot more, or is more noticeable when you're a woman playing rock and roll.
I think that it is. I'll wait till this passes.
Okay, that's why she's a drunk passes.
I think aging matters very much to guys, and they come off like they don't. It doesn't bother them, but believe me, you know, some of these guys out there have had plastic surgery. They've had liposuction. And they talk about it. You know, not all of them talk about it, but they've had back injuries. They've had shitty, terrible feet. You know, it's. getting old as a rock star or a rock performer is tough. It's but then again, I mean, I don't know. Listen, I love the Rolling Stones. I remember when they did a tour called the Steel Wheels Tour, and I jokingly referred to it as the Aluminum Walker Tour. Now that was how many years ago, but I love the Rolling Stones, but like everybody cracks on people when they get older. So it's women getting older, yeah, I mean, but and at those rock festivals I was telling you about over in Europe that we were playing, I thought we were going to be the oldest band. I was like, oh God, we're going to be so old out there, but it's like ZZ Top, Faith No More, they're all older or as old as we are. So it's kind of, I think Susie's used an expression that she read in the New York Times or something, like the graying of rock. Mm-hmm. So we're graying along with everybody else anyway. So it's, as far as women go, I don't know. People are harsh on women all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? How they look, how they look, But they're, trolls are mean to men too, so.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
You know what I mean? They were pretty harsh on Jim Morrison when he gained some pounds, you know what I mean? So, and Elvis Presley, so.
Yeah, I guess it's just like when you don't remember that stuff as much. You like remember them at their prime. So I forgot about that at the end.
Yeah, if you're in the public eye and you start to look like shit, people are going to notice, and they're going to be harsh, and they always sort of have been,
And can I just ask a little bit about your like personal life and the effect that your career as a musician, as a rock musician, has had? Are you married?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever? I'm not looking for any details, just in general. Did touring or being a musician, what kind of effect did it have on your long-term relationships? So you're getting married, or did you ever want to have a family, or did you just never want to have a family and you just wanted to get married?
I don't think, as an adult, I never wanted to have a family. I didn't want to have kids. That's never been my thing. I've had very few relationships that have been affected with me being on the road. Mm-hmm. I'm not a gal who's always had a boyfriend. Like I said, I'm alone a lot. I mean, our drummer Dee was married since 1990, so oh, wow. She's probably was more affected by that. I would say, if anything, it may have gotten me laid more, not because of groupies or anything like that, just because, like I said, I was around people all the time instead of, not being around people. Yeah, so, you know what I mean? And there is, there are some people who are attracted to someone up on stage, and it's like, so I probably got more action
from being
in a band.
So that goes both ways too, then.
Not in the sense that guys, there's a groupie gene, and I think that it remains only in women.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a fan gene that is throughout both men and women, but the groupie thing is a very female phenomenon. Yeah. Because I've seen some ugly fucking rock guys get laid by some gorgeous women who are just lined up for them, and I'm like, okay, we're not that unattractive. Like, where's the dudes for us? And it doesn't really exist. It doesn't exist. Guys are just too fucking intimidated to come up and, but unless you know, I would always think that a dude that would come up to me gets brownie points for having the guts to come up to me. You know what I mean? So I would say if you're a dude or a chick, go up to a famous or semi-famous person and hit on them, because seriously, that doesn't happen as much as you think it does. You know, with women anyway.
Yeah.
With dudes, it happens all the time. You can be, you know.
Okay. Well, I guess this will be. I don't want to end on like the personal life question. That's kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah.
But, can you just discuss a little bit? You've been working on you had the idea for the documentary a while ago, right? You're working on an L7 doc.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I'm not holding the reins per se. I've handed that over to a filmmaker, but supplying her with what she needs has been a lot of work, and doing some of the business heavy lifting for the band right now. I've been doing also. So yeah, I've been busy with that for the past few years.
Mm-hmm. And that's just. I mean, like you were saying earlier, that was just kind of did that start as a reaction of you feeling like L7 had kind of been forgotten? Like you said, Googling your name and...
I think it was a combination, because I was, to be honest, I was kind of pissed, you know, and I didn't feel like I was bitter. I felt like I was... looking out for my younger self and like what we had accomplished, and like I mean, I almost as I told you how my sister read my Wikipedia and it pissed her off. It's almost like I can look at myself as a younger person and be pissed off for that person, like what the fuck, so and for my bandmates, like, God damn it, why doesn't everybody know Susie Gardner's name? That's fucking bullshit. Like, she's a fucking amazing songwriter, great player, really cool voice, like great sense of humor. So it was part of that, and also because I had so much shit in my house, just like archival stuff, and I was like, okay, this has got to get digitized, or I don't want anything to happen to this stuff, because I do feel like it's like, if I were a 16-year-old girl, I'd want to know about L7, so if I were disenfranchised anyone, I'd want to know about L7. So that was the motivation for it, and then I just happened to meet Sarah Price, so that worked out great.
She's the
documentary. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So that was cool.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it, because I think anything that like enriches the historical record is worth it. And yeah, I was equally as pissed when I read your Wikipedia.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I get more and more angry, like, because
See?
I do a lot of research before I do the interviews, and how difficult it is to find information about you. It's like, how can I even prepare for the interview when I can't find anything?
Well, it's interesting too. I mean, I think that's every generation before this time right now is very easy to be wiped out.
Yeah.
Because there's no digital information on them. You know what I mean? So it's kind of this weird, like.
I think it is like a half gender, half technology thing. And I hate coming across as like a Nazi feminist. I mean, I'm a feminist.
I hate that term.
But
Nazi. Don't even.
People call me that.
I know. People have called me a feminazi. It's such a fucking. Just call them Rush Limbaugh back.
Yeah.
You fucking Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, I'm kind of like sick of feeling bad about it too.
Yeah. No. I mean, please. People have said that shit to me for years.
Yeah.
It's so offensive. It's just like, fuck you.
But I agree with what you said about the figurehead, and I'm not putting the figureheads down at all. I like to make that clear too. But when I do research, especially like you, Veruca Salt, I mean, it's really hard to find stuff. Mm-hmm. and what I find is mostly about like Courtney Love and Kathleen Hanna,
Mm-hmm.
and that is like the 90s in
Mm-hmm.
a nutshell,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't. And I just think that kind of forgetting doesn't apply so much to guys. It's like you have the huge 90s male bands,
Mm-hmm.
Pearl Jam, Nirvana, all those, but then you can still Google and find like the lesser popular dude bands online, but it's a lot harder to find information about the female bands. So I think it's like half gender and half technology.
I'm not saying anything about these gals' artistry or anything. I'm just speaking very frankly.
Mm-hmm.
They both married huge rock star guys, and they both have a lot of money. And like I said, when you've got the bread to hire publicists a lot, that's who gets covered, you know. So that's not by accident that you know, and I don't think it's maniacal or anything like that. It's just like they have resources, a lot of fucking resources. And when you don't have resources because you don't even have health insurance, you know, it's harder to keep your legacy alive, you know. So, you know, there you go. They both married very rich rock stars.
Yeah, I guess I always forget who Kathleen Hanna's married to.
I don't.
You don't.
I don't forget who she. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
no harm, no foul, but it's like, well, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
Well, I mean,
Food for thought.
anything-
Food for thought on that one.
Is there anything that you would like to end on? Do you have any like closing thoughts? Is there anything that I forgot? I know it's really hard to like condense
I know.
someone's career and kind of life into like a couple hours.
I
but
think we covered
that's
it. I
pretty
mean,
well-rounded.
yeah, I think we covered it. I mean, you know, I think I'm usually a person who does a lot more cracking up and stuff like that and joking around and stuff. This was a very serious sort of interview, but you know, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I know it's for Smith College, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh, I hope you didn't feel like you couldn't crack a joke.
No, listen, I think I was very frank with you, and I think I said things to you that I haven't said to media before because it can be misconstrued, or I could come off as, you know, being, I was just pretty fucking honest with you, you know, like, so.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you know, normally I withhold some things that, you know, but whatever.
All right. Well, it's been an honor. I just want you to know that we're both like huge fans. Too.
All right,
so yeah, we're like acting pretty cool though.
Yeah, no, you're acting very like.
I have to act normal. Like I can't be
right.
But I just want you to know, and this is Smith College, how fucking psyched I am.
Oh, that's so great.
Here and speaking with you.
That's so great. Thank you
very
so
much
much.
for taking the time.
Sure, my pleasure.